Museums are the craziest things in the modern world. They house all the old historical pieces and historical items of our past. They're spread out all over the world. Different museums have different things, but they have these things. They collected them over time. And these items may have been stolen, they may have been gifted, but ultimately they belong to someone else. How they got there tends to be the problematic thing. And I remember thinking about this with my wife when we were going through one of the museums in New York so long ago. And we were just thinking about some of these materials belonging to our own ancestors, right? Way back in South Asia, thinking about how some of these were captured from there and brought here on display to show off and gloat. Be this piece that this white museum is showcasing as a stolen reward of something that doesn't belong to them. But also, it serves in that same vein as an educational piece. As someone who may not be able to experience some of these things abroad, these serve as a tool to see into what was, a glimpse into the past, and a way to understand how people were back then. Look at how they wrote down their languages, look at how they communicated, look at how they just went about their day-to-day lives. So museums do serve a dual purpose, but they also are an institution that harbors stolen goods. And that's what I wanted to discuss today. In this unedited yap, I wanted to firstly go over my issues with museums in general, but also how I believe museums can move forward and actually be institutions of positivity, how they can actually serve the global present, serve the past, and be harbingers of a better future for our relics, for a way that we can view the past in a better light. So firstly, going over that intro, I think you can probably tell how I feel about museums in general. They, again, are they're harboring stolen materials of our past, whether it be urns or broken tools, or maybe just skeletons and bones of animals and dinosaurs that we had of previous times. But some of those materials we don't necessarily have ownership over. Think about the dead bodies that exist in some museums. Think about the pharaoh's tombs that were taken by the British and brought over into their museums, maybe one day returned, but there's many items out there that were taken from other regions of the world, East Asia, South Asia, Africa, wherever. Even amongst themselves, the Western world has been pillaging for centuries and millennia at this point. There's so many examples of famous relics that have been pillaged through war or campaigns in different regions, spoils of an event that were really not involving the people that they were trampling over, but they were just there at a time and they were taken as, again, a relic, as something that they haven't experienced before. And in many ways, it served as an education piece. When these things were brought back, they were shown as wonders of the world. People flocked all over to these museums to see the latest grabs from the latest expeditions. But in many ways, that's like so messed up, because now we have the tools for trade. We have the tools to cross-communicate with anyone at any point, at any time, almost instantaneously, and to be able to bring information across and share our ideas. So why aren't we doing this with our current materials? Why are we continuing in the Western world, in many museums in North America, in many museums in the UK, in just Europe in general, the Western world, why are we housing items that don't belong to these people? The owners of these museums don't have the moral right. I guess they have some type of legal right to these items because they're the curator of these museums and these were stolen, and because of the amount of time spent there, it's just theirs for whatever reason. But in many ways, this gets into the conversation around like land ownership. And, when, certain people tell certain other people to go back home, to go back to their own country, maybe they should do that as well, because technically the land is not of them, not of the first settlers, if you will. It is of the people of the land. And so for those natives, I can imagine it's very frustrating to have their societies ripped apart, not repaired, for centuries at a time. And now in a modern era, see this happen not only with themselves, but with many other groups of people as well. Have their materials, their items, and sometimes even their religious relics taken from them and just kind of gawked at, made fun of in some ways. You know, ooh, that's such a weird statue. Why did they make those Hindu statues blue? Why are they of that color? Why are they this? Why do they have so many arms? What strange groups of people? These are like common things that people will say when they look at various Hindu religious statues. Or people might say weird things about different religious texts. They might look at the way that something is written and find a language so foreign, so strange. Even though if you really like separate yourself from, for example, the English language, a lot of the lettering is actually very ugly and does not mesh well together. A lot of hard lines that don't come together unless you're writing in cursive. It's not a smooth language. It's not a great looking language, honestly. It's just what you're used to. When you look at other languages and how different people have brought across certain texts, again, I'm bringing across examples as a South Asian, but think about something like the Hindu language where there's like a bar all the way across, and how a lot of these languages are very similar. I think about how Bengali is similar written to that. They may not have the bar exactly, but it does in many ways, right? I guess Bengali writing has that bar across too, but it's shown in different ways. And it comes from Sanskrit and how that language has evolved over time. And these are all education pieces that are actually important to understand our past, to understand how we can then potentially see our current language and our current society evolve. Try and learn from the mistakes of our past. And yet, you know, in many ways, we can see how we're repeating many of those things with the current climate of our socioeconomic, political, I don't know, what was Jaden Smith saying about his friends and how he didn't want to hang out with them? Someone let me know in the comment section down below. But it's a strange time to be alive. And at this time, we can only hope that these museums can serve to be not just thieves or thieves. I don't know why I said thieves, but people that kind of profit off of these stolen goods of other cultures. I believe that they can serve to be curators of not only education, but preservation of some of these items. And in many ways, I want to list 3 different ways that I believe museums can serve now to kind of fix what they have sown, fix the issues that kind of face them. How not only, I would imagine people are going less and less to museums. With information at your fingertips, you can Google a lot of this stuff, and you know, a funky little TikTok can tell you about them. Many people may not be going to museums, but they're still a great trip to go to, a great thing to see if you're interested in them. And the first way that I believe museums can be a great kind of place in society, an educational institution, a place to find information and learn, is through that education. Teaching people about the past, holding exhibits about different eras of time, different materials that they have found through excavations or co-shared. And in many ways, museums are already doing this. And that's fair. The museums are already doing this. And I think in many ways, this should be pushed more in schools and to the public to come and learn about these different cultures and how some of these different cultures, the way they lived and the things that they experienced. Maybe the piece that they are showcasing is a period piece. They're highlighting a term of great famine or great war or great success, great splendor. And showcasing that gets to highlight where we might be in contrast in society. And it becomes a great think piece, right? It becomes a place where people can come in and truly understand that humans do repeat a lot of mistakes in their past, and we probably will do so in the future. And how can we learn from them? How can we shorten these periods of repeat and be better on the other side? How can we maybe hold it off for longer and longer? How can we grow as a society through the mistakes of our past? That comes with that education and showcasing different languages, how they were written down, and maybe adapt that to how we write down our own languages, how we store that information in the cloud versus on paper, the pros and cons of both. And many of these things, again, serve as that education piece. Hold these seminars, hold these different exhibits for the people, for the public in a very accessible way. I think another way that museums can serve as a positive force in the world is going to be through conservation of the materials themselves. And again, in many ways, museums already do this. And I think this also needs to be highlighted because yes, you can give back a lot of these items to the people that they belong to. And in many ways, they would be safe. They belong there. What they want to do with those items should be showcased there. In many ways, those people should have their own museums for people now to go to, because in some ways, travel and visiting the whole world is as inaccessible as ever, but also as accessible as ever. Boats, planes, cars, it's easier to go to different places, but also in many ways expensive. So it's a give and take. And so when it goes to those places, they should also have the tools to conserve them like many of these bigger museums do. I think about something like the Declaration of Independence or many paintings out there, how in many ways the items that you're seeing shown in a museum may not actually be the real versions of said paintings and or documentation, because the originals of these were made in a or organic matter or a slightly inorganic matter, something based off of carbon. They might be made out of paper. The old Declaration of Independence might be cracking and breaking at the seam, because if you understand your basic chemistry and how reactions work, these materials, such as the documentation that these rules were originally made on, do react to oxygen over time, and they do break down from there. And so you have to hold them in airtight containers and put like a cloud of clear gas in them to make sure that the reaction is slowed severely. Think about something like a painting that has oil on it, or different types of colors, different types of bases on them to make the painting, and how they expand and shrink over time, drying in different heats and temperatures, and that causing ebbing and flowing of the paint in and out of the paper and potentially cracking. And then you start to lose what the original painting was. And so this is like some important stuff that a lot of museums do to conserve a lot of historical paintings that are out there. And I think we should be doing this with many paintings. A lot of the paintings that we have are great wonders of the Western world. They are views of what we have seen in the West, famously in Europe, and then kind of brought over into North America. But we don't have this highlighted on a larger scale, in my opinion, of South Asian art and East Asian art or African art. Honestly, some we do a little bit, it's growing, but it's still seen as like an exotic thing, right? Because it's relative to, especially where I am right now in North America, it's exotic to us. And so I think a lot of these need to be more normalized so that we don't have to treat them as an exotic exhibit necessarily. We can treat them as a normal exhibit that we care for in the same level, such as the great paintings of the world, the great structures of the world, the great idols and statues that were made, carved out of many materials such as bronze and or stone. And many of these do have specific preserving rules that you have to follow, certain things that you have to do to maintain, for example, the bronze, if it's like outside and everything, and the overtime weathering through the wind and materials if you leave a statue outside. And so in many ways, it's important to bring some of these in a more enclosed environment. But similar to the first point, these things can be done if resources were given to people in that region. And there's something to be said about information management of today and creating copies of things, creating the original looks, 3D scans of things. And that's all fair and well. Like we should be doing that, but we should also be housing these in the original places that they belonged in and having those people curate them and having them gain some type of benefit from this. If people want to come see them, they should have to pay to come see them at their home location. They should be exhibited there. And then the final way that I think on that line that museums can act as a force of positivity is be a central host of kind of accountability, collaboration with other museums. Many museums and their collections are pretty siloed. Some items are so famous that they move across different museums sectors, but a form of collaboration between all museums and a co-ownership in many ways, or just a trading between different materials does happen now, but it should be on a wider scale. For example, the materials and tools that maybe were taken from the old, South Asian folks that were in that region of India way back when, hundreds of years ago, some of those materials are being showcased all over the world. Why don't we co-own them with the museums that exist in India or in other places in South Asia and bring them back and forth and showcase them in different ways and trade them, have this art being shown here in the Western world, but this happening in South Asia. These are different ways that we can have this co-ownership and collaboration in collaboration with and all that stuff, have that notoriety with a famous institution or university to bring legitimacy to these places and have people come as an attraction and have that economy kind of gain some type of value from having these materials there as well as part of that co-ownership. But also with that kind of ethical accountability perspective, be a central force or a central driver in having accountability for the colonial powers, for the wars that were taking place to take these materials, and have accountability for the fact that these are stolen goods. They were not gifts. They were taken from people that didn't know any better. They were tricked and traded from these people for things of lesser value and or for free. And so these museums can talk about these histories without, trying to erase it, if you will. Many education systems right now are being brought into question with the kind of censorship that we see online, especially in the United States in many ways. And I bring that up just as someone in North America. There's a lot of education out there that is being kind of left aside. A lot of students, a lot of people that are younger, even older, are not being given the chance, being privy to information that many people had access to before, or were being even forced taught to way long ago. And these things are important to understand. It's important to understand the destruction being caused by people of the past and how we can repeat that. Holding accountability for the things being done while also showing forward progress in that is important. So having that education, having that conservation, and having accountability and upraising other museums and other members of these communities, I think, are three ways that museums can serve to improve and be better for the public. They shouldn't be great monoliths of society where the Western world and white people, honestly, at the end of the day, can showcase how powerful their trials and tribulations were in wars and enslaving other people. It should not just be that. It should be a testament to, as I mentioned, education and accountability. It should be a testament towards progress in bringing about unity across the world. And it should be a better place for many people to go and feel at peace, not feel like they are witnessing something that belonged to their ancestors, that should be belong to them, but is now encased in a security safe glassware where people back home for them, their ancestors, their people right now don't have access to them because it was stolen from them hundreds of years ago, but now don't belong to them because they serve as a great moneymaker currently in some museum. That's my yap for the day. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How do you feel about museums? It was something that I never thought of when I was growing up, but more recently I did when I went to a specifically South Asian exhibit. And I thought about, wow, these things existed in my country and many of them were broken. And then I thought, oh, wow, these are like stolen goods. Like some of these were tools that were taken. Some of these were religious items that were taken and broken. And you see the context of them. They were taken in broken buildings or maybe during a skirmish. These are things that don't belong here. These aren't things that belong to these people, to this museum, but they were brought here anyway. They were sometimes brought as gifts, but sometimes thought of as treasures. And there's many items all over the world that are the same way. And in some ways, it's great because they are being preserved. Museums are doing their due diligence to make sure that these items and these relics stay around to show people and to educate. But you know the powers that be. If there's money to be made, then these items are likely around to just gain some type of profit. And that's why I think museums are just a crazy place.